Hello, and welcome to Making Sense of It. This program is for you. It is our gift to you from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory, and I am Mona Duncan, your moderator. Each week we have a faculty member present a concept of choice theory and reality therapy to help you see the simplicity and the depth, how that it is something that is just gets deeper and deeper and more meaningful the more that it is used and put into practice. Our speaker today is Nancy Herrick, senior faculty, and she's going to be teaching us on making a break in going from getting your balance back, going from control to balance, and talking about the circle of strength. So welcome everyone that is here and those of you that will be watching later. So Nancy, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. So I always enjoy listening to these things. I don't get a chance to get online with them every single week, but I always go back and try to listen to everybody. So it's very nice to be able to do one. And today I'm going to be talking about a concept or a strategy, I guess you could call it. It's called the circle of strength, and it's what has been adapted from choice theory understanding of the theory itself and the steps to help a dysfunctional system come back into being a functional system, working well in more effective control. So I'm going to share my screen, hopefully, and see if this works. Okay, and now I have to hit the right button here, and it's covered, so I can't see it. There we go, now. Okay. So I entitled this didn't work, From Blame to Balance, using choice theory. Oh, maybe it won't do it once I'm on the screen. Oh, okay, well.
So down at the bottom, do you see down at the bottom where it has a full screen to go to?
No, it doesn't have it. Let's see. Click at the bottom.
Bottom right. There you go.
There it is. Okay,
yeah, that's it.
It was covered. Okay, so this is called From Blame to Balance, using choice theory. This is actually a workshop that I presented at the international conference in Australia several years ago. And I thought, I've been teaching it lately to some of the clients that I have. And so I thought, well, this would be a good thing to put on, making sense of it. So I've altered it a little bit, but because at the conference, everybody was there face to face. So we did some role plays, walking the chart and so forth on the floor. But here we're just going to have to, make shift with interactive learning on the internet. So, and this concept was developed from the Cartman triangle, which was Stephen Cartman from, I think from Austria or Hungary or Germany or somewhere like that, created. He was a psychologist that worked with dysfunctional systems in business and education. And he created what he called the Cartman triangle. And so from that, which is what happens in a dysfunctional system where people are just sniping at each other. So what happened from that is Shelley Brierly took this concept and said, that's all external control. We need to have choice theory understanding, because the Cartman triangle is talking about blaming, criticizing, persecuting. You can see the little merry-go-round here. Somebody feeling victimized, somebody trying to rescue or enable this thing to go on. So it's just a merry-go-round of vicious cycle, vicious circle. Everybody at each other and not feeling good, and anger and aggression and all those things just start popping up. So moving it to choice theory understanding, how do we get along together so we are happier? So in dysfunctional family systems, and Shelley worked with, I should say that Shelley's from Vancouver, British Columbia. She worked with dysfunctional families and did a lot of in-home family counseling, did a lot of marriage counseling, and things like that. And so she said, I've been using this triangle and didn't know exactly how to teach people how to get off of it. It was just each person, maybe I would give them a little different advice, but she said, once I learned choice theory, it was so easy to get off that triangle. But what we get is all these external controlling behaviors just start popping up. So resentment, disrespect, blaming, anger, jealousy, everybody feeling bad, and it just keeps going. People are blaming each other and criticizing each other. And Stephen Cartman called it the drama triangle, but we've changed the name a little bit to the cycle of blame. And then we're going to move to, this is his drama triangle. You have one person on one corner of this triangle who's a persecutor, the person who's jumping on everybody. And one person in the triangle feels like they're the victim. And then somebody else oftentimes jumps in and tries to rescue. But what happens is this cycle of blame is when someone's trying to rescue, they're either trying to, cajole the victim, and the persecutor gets madder and gets more angry or more hostile, or they're trying to persecute the persecutor and they've changed positions on the triangle. Now they become the persecutor, saying, don't say that, you shouldn't do that to her, that she can't stand that, she doesn't like that. And then the victim person tries to rescue and says, it's okay, I'm not any good, don't worry about it, I'm not worth working, And so it just kind of runs around the circle. So people have a tendency, when you're in this dysfunctional system, to run the different corners. And usually you'll find, if you're in any kind of a dysfunctional system, you'll find that there's two corners that you're willing to do, but the third one is very hard for you to do. So for instance, when I was in not a terrifically great marriage at the end, before my divorce, we had quite a good dysfunctional system going on. And I would either be the persecutor or I would be the victim. I hardly ever knew how to go to the rescuer. So I might rescue my kids if my husband was jumping on them. But most of the time I was persecuting him for jumping on the kids versus becoming the rescuer or the enabler. So I always ran those two, the victim or the persecutor, the weak or the very strong in the triangle. And the third party, the rescuer or the enabler, is the person who kind of keeps it going or shifts the positions to another position by becoming either the persecutor or the victim. So that's what the triangle looks like. So in the persecutor position, this person tends to blame others, criticize, and does not offer guidance or assistance, but just tells them, yells at them, complains, makes somebody else the victim, puts people down, uses all kinds of negative external controlling behaviors, criticizing, blaming, complaining, all those. Okay. The rescuer, can you see my screen? Because I don't know if this thing is covering it, maybe. Okay. The rescuer, or the victim, let's go to the victim, the other corner. The victim tends to think that they're powerless, that they can't get off of this. They're helpless. They're not worthy of even getting away from this. And they might as well just lay down and die or run away or walk away or just be quiet and just close themselves off. So the victim often is crying, is isolating, is arguing, but usually feeling pretty down in there and feeling like they're being, really stepped all over. So, and the rescuer is the person who says, I've got to do something, I got to change this. And so they either become the rescuer to try to help the victim, or they become the persecutor to blame the persecutor for what they're doing. So it just becomes a drama of conflict. So we saw this in the story Cinderella, right? We have the persecutor, the stepmother, complaining to Cinderella, blaming her, telling her she's doing everything wrong. We have Cinderella feeling like she's a victim. Why me? I'll never get out of this. And then the fairy godmother who comes in as the rescuer. You can do this. So we run these different corners and we move from one to the next, as long as we don't learn to use the choice theory connecting behaviors. As long as we're using those disconnecting behaviors, we're just going from one corner to another corner to another corner. So we're just changing positions. Shelley called this the cycle of blame, because that's really what's happening. All these disconnecting behaviors and others, other than the ones that we already have listed in our 7 disconnecting habits, are there. You're going to find people resenting each other, demanding, commanding, arguing, and attempting to control each other with their negative statements. So in the little book called Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart, which is it's just a little tiny, thin little book, but it has some really great stuff in it. And one of the statements in it is that any relationship is under the control of the person who cares the least. And I want you to think about that for a moment. We always think that it's the persecutor that's in control, but actually it's the person who cares the least about what's happening that has the control. So think about that for a minute. Do you have a relationship or have you seen a relationship, I should say, not yours, but seen a relationship where, and I think this happened in my divorce, the person who had the most control of whether we got divorced or not was not me. I cared. I didn't want the divorce. My husband wanted out. So he cared less about the relationship, and therefore there wasn't anything I could do to keep him in it. So the relationship is under the control of the person who cares the least. It seems crazy, but it's really quite obvious when you think about it. Of course, we know, as Glasser has told us, the only behavior we can control is our own. So trying to control someone else just creates sources of conflict. Where does conflict come from? It can come from a lot of different places, but it usually comes because our scales are not balanced, because we don't feel like we're getting what we want. And so one of our needs seems to be unmet. It's not actually fully unmet. We're meeting our needs, but maybe not in the way we would like to. So the less effective behavior. And many times that comes from limited resources, time, money, property, people in the family, moving away, using drugs or checking out or isolating themselves or whatever. Or it could come from having different values, beliefs, or principles. And conflict can start there also. But anyway, when we get into a conflict, we usually consider it's bad. One of the things I learned as I was doing my training is conflict's not always bad, but we need to learn from it, move out of it, and then recognize and become aware of what we did to change that conflict into an option or an opportunity. But what usually happens is, as you see at the bottom here, the external way of we either avoid it, withdraw, ignore, or deny it, or we confront it with threats, aggression, and anger. And what we need to do is learn how to use our choice theory communication, our caring habits, our respect for resolution. We have to get together. We can't do this by ourselves. Even though we can only control our own behavior, we need to initiate a discussion, a talk when everybody's not upset, where we're not blaming and complaining and giving information. And so in this case, the persecutor would be initiating the conversation. The victim would be inviting, or would come and get involved in the conversation, and the rescuer would be inviting each of them to look at their own needs and their own behaviors and their own wants. So we know it all is stemming from getting rid of those disconnecting habits and moving to the connecting habits. And these plus many others that there could be too. So, and responsibility goes in on these connecting habits very strongly, even though it's not the 5 there. But we need to learn how to be responsible for our own behavior. So I want to take us through a little, couple little one-liner types of scenarios and see how this plays out. And we're going to sort of pick out which behaviors are being used. So this is a family dynamics, and James is a young university professor husband. Eloise is his wife, and she's a stay-at-home mom now. They have 2 daughters, Denise and Dorothy. And so this is a little difficulty that when James came home from work one day, he sees his daughter, Dorothy, and his wife arguing about a youth weekend trip to the beach that Dorothy wants to go on. And James has told Dorothy that she could go earlier. And now Eloise is finding out about it. And she's saying that James doesn't understand about teenagers. She will not allow Dorothy to go. So let's see what we're going to hear. I'm going to put the dialogue up on the screen. I'm going to ask 3 of you to read the dialogue. So each one of you is going to pick to be James, the father. One's going to pick to be Eloise, the mom, and one is going to choose to be Dorothy, the daughter, if that's okay with you. So first of all, I want you to image what you think. We know what the scenario is here. What do you think each family member may be thinking in their head, even before Dad gets to the door and hears the argument? So would Dad be thinking that things are okay? Would before he sees that they're arguing? What would what would Eloise and Dorothy, the mom and the daughter, be doing before Dad gets there? And then, secondly, what would each person, where would they place themselves on that cycle of blame? And what would be the dialogue running through their heads? And then what we're going to do is move through it and come back to these questions. What would commonly happen when Dad walks in? Describe where each person is on the triangle, and then what can each person do to move out of the cycle of blame? So I'm going to help you with it, but we're going to do it. So here's the role play. So I need 3 people to help me. Have I got 3 people that can help me here? Who will be James?
I will be.
Father.
What's all the yelling?
And who's going to be Dorothy, the daughter?
I can be.
Okay.
Dad, Mom's not being fair.
And Eloise, who's the wife?
I'll do that.
Okay.
You just don't understand the situation, James. You should never have told her she could go. She can't go on a weekend to the beach without chaperones. She can't be trusted like that.
Okay, so let's stop right there for a minute and let's look at, see if I can get to the next slide. Whoop. Uh-oh. How do I go back? I want to go back. Okay, maybe I don't need to go back. Which corners of the triangle do you think each one of them is on? How about James? Which corner of the triangle? Do you think he's the persecutor, the victim, the rescuer?
Probably rescuer, wouldn't he be?
Maybe because he's saying, what's all the yelling? Okay. And Dorothy, what do you think?
I think
Where are you?
I think I'm the victim.
Okay, victim. And when she says, Mom's not being fair, she's almost blaming, isn't she?
Yes.
Or criticizing. Okay. And Eloise, where do you think you are?
Say I'm the persecutor.
Okay. You're persecuting and you're blaming James that he's not very smart. Okay, let's go back to the role play again. So start to take off again. So James, you're next.
Dorothy, you didn't tell me there would be no adults on this trip.
Now you're going to side with Mom. I knew you would. You never let me go with my friends.
Now see here, we have rules around here. Will you do as we say?
Okay, so have they changed positions?
Dorothy's still the victim.
Dorothy's still the victim, but Eloise has changed to?
More, would you say rescuer?
Well, I think she's changed to the persecutor, definitely here.
James
But she's not persecuting James anymore. Now she's persecuting Dorothy.
Right.
Okay, let's keep on going.
Not telling me the truth about this weekend was a bad idea. You should be grounded for 2 weeks. No, more like a month.
Now wait, James, I think that's too much. You are going to make it impossible to live with her.
James?
I thought you wanted me to reprimand her. Now you're taking her side. How am I supposed to keep her in check if you tell her something and then don't back me up on the discipline?
So can you hear the different cycles? They just keep going around and round and talking and just not accomplishing what they're trying to do, which is to solve the problem. Okay, so
You could also do this with faces, that you'd put up the face and then another face to become the persecutor, the rescuer, the victim.
yeah, that'd be cool. So with choice theory, we know that all behavior is purposeful. They're trying to satisfy themselves and balance their scales, and all the behaviors they're using are less than effective. And our genetic needs and our quality world beliefs are driving what we're doing. And the only behavior we control is our own. So external controlling behaviors tend to drive our relationships apart and create unsatisfying feelings. This leads to failure identities and creates a cycle of blame. So what are we going to do in order to break out of that dysfunctional behavior cycle? If we learn to use choice theory language, we have to first become aware. Start at the bottom of the stairs. First, you need to know and be aware of your own behavior and be able to identify, what is that I want here? What am I accomplishing? What am I trying to do? And then analyze, what need is this? For mom, what do you think mom's need is when she's saying she can't go? And then moving to, and then telling dad that he's doing the wrong thing. What do you think mom's need is? What's behind her behavior? You guys have any idea?
Mhm. Well, I think she's trying to protect her daughter, so that's probably relating to power and control.
Okay, she's trying to be a good mom, right?
Mhm.
Be a protector, to do the right thing, okay? And so she's trying to get that love and belonging and maybe the power needs met. And also probably to teach Dorothy a lesson about, you can't just do something and you have your freedom if you're not responsible.
Right,
So trying
exactly.
to be that great mom. Okay, so once we are aware of our behavior and we can analyze what we're really trying to do, what's our belief behind it? What's the quality world picture we have behind it? Then we can evaluate, is what I'm saying or what I'm going to say in the next minute or two going to create a better situation, help people to learn or come closer to me, or is it going to push them or drive them farther away? And then I can speak. But if we don't hesitate in between, when we feel that anger coming up or the resentment coming up or the sadness, coming into our back wheels, if we don't stop and pause for a second and become aware and analyze and evaluate before we speak, we'll probably stay in that dysfunctional system. Of course, Glasser says, happy people are constantly evaluating their own behavior. Unhappy people are constantly evaluating others. So this is what the circle of strength looks like. And you see the Cartman triangle, the red triangle in the middle. It's the triangle of blame and pain, blame, shame, fault, regrets, excuses, complaining, criticizing, all of that's inside. And you'll see the three positions on the corners of the triangle are in red: persecutor, victim, and rescuer. Okay, and then we have to move out of that. This is where she came with her circle of strength. We have to look at the strengths of our individual needs that we're trying to satisfy and look at the strengths within ourselves to move out to the circle of strength, the yellow circle, where we're collaborating and cooperating and using connecting habits. And so Shelley has changed the titles of these positions now. Instead of instead of persecuting, we're going to change to being the initiator. So, and we're going to talk a little more about what that looks like. But instead of persecuting, I'm going to initiate a conversation. Instead of being the victim, I'm going to learn how to cooperate and take responsibility and do my part and listen well. And instead of being a rescuer or enabler, I'm going to learn how to facilitate or coach or help because I care. So we're moving to those positions instead. So instead of persecutor, I'm going to move to initiator. Instead of victim, I'm going to move to cooperating. And instead of rescuer, moving to facilitator. So, and then Shelley added the last one about collaboration, because it's getting to all of us becoming part of that circle of strength versus staying on that cycle of blame. So let's see what those look like. So the initiator Get this thing out of here. The initiator sets boundaries, follows what he believes, uses assertive I messages without blaming or complaining about the other person, but this is what I want, this is what I hope, this is what I think. He initiates ideas and opinions and owns his own behaviors. Okay, the facilitator, which would be the mom in this case, the facilitator negotiates and looks for understanding. She's asking and clarifying, seeking agreements between the parties that have been at war with each other, and learning how to collapse conflict and teaching them how to collapse conflict. The victim, instead of feeling down and bad, learns to listen clearly, to learn to accept and agree, be flexible and bend, take responsibility for their part of this situation. And the collaborator is just kind of the overall leadership of the thing, so it doesn't necessarily have to be another person. But if you had a mediator, for instance, in a dysfunctional system, family system or whatever, and there's a mediator there, then that person could take that collaborator role of just sharing the responsibility, helping people to listen to each other and so forth. So here's what some of these look like, or what you might say in these positions. So as the initiator, you might say, define your role and say, my job here is, or as the dad of this household, or because I'm the man here that needs to, be supportive, or that needs to, make sure things are working well, or needs to make sure we're following the rules. I believe, I will, I want, what I'm willing to do, and what I want to see happen, or what I think. This is my part of the responsibility. It's not to solve the problem, but it's to give opportunities, options, initiate new ideas, and throw in some opinions possibly, but label those. These are my opinions. This is what I think. Doesn't mean it's what we're going to do. It's what I think. It's what I believe. It's what I'm willing to do. Okay. So the facilitator is in that inquiry orientation. So she's looking for answers and wanting to know what part of this problem is each of your responsibilities. So she's going to be asking and clarifying, reflecting sometimes, seeking agreements and maybe summarizing, but using a lot of negotiation and understanding and respect, all in that position. The cooperator is going to be synthesizing. How do I put things together? I know I have some responsibility here, but what is my part of the responsibility? And what is someone else's, so that I can step back and not try to control that? I can only control my own behavior. So I need to be flexible and listen and accept and agree when I can, and state clearly what I think. So, and then of course the collaborator, and the collaborator usually says, together we can, together let's respect each other. Together we are going to be able to share the responsibility and figure this out. So let's process back to the family members again. So as the father, I'm going to ask you guys to help me out here. As the father, what do you think the father could say? And so we're going to go back to the script again here in a minute. What leg were you running in your first thought when your scales were unbalanced? And then what circle of strength statements or questions could you choose to form in your mind before speaking? And then could you state one of those? So let's see what we could do. So Dad, the first one was, what's all the yelling? Instead of saying blame or complaining about the yelling, what could Dad be thinking?
Hey, what's going on here?
Okay, what's going on? So looking for information. Okay, and Dorothy, as the daughter, you're saying Mom's not being fair. What's her need?
She wants to go on this trip.
Okay, so maybe need
Love
for
and belonging.
freedom, power, maybe
Yeah.
love and belonging with her friends. Okay, and what is she? So what is the thinking that she has?
That she's not getting what she wants, and that Mom is the one that's in the way.
Okay, and so if she was going to move to, instead of the victim, and she was going to move to the cooperator, the person who's agreeing, listening closely, clarifying, trying to understand, trying to be flexible, what could she say here?
I could say, Dad, Mom and I are having a disagreement about whether I can go to the beach.
Okay. All right. And then Eloise, that sounds really good. So Eloise, you're thinking, we talked a little bit about what you were thinking. You were thinking that you wanted to be a good mom. You wanted to teach responsibility. You wanted to, not just to protect your daughter and so forth. And so what could you say if Dad has said what's going on and Dorothy has sort of explained that there's been an argument and you're trying to figure out how to solve it? What could you say as the mom?
I could say, this is the situation that I understand. These are the facts, these are the parameters that we're talking about. I'm concerned about some of the activities going to take place.
All right. And so we're going to forget about the rest of this. And then can we solve this problem? Let's try it. So go ahead. James, can you throw something else in? And then it doesn't have to go exactly as this goes, but.
Yeah, well, James is realizing that the daughter, in giving the information to him, did not give all the information.
Mm-hmm.
And that he probably had some assumptions on his own. So now he needs to let her know that that is not acceptable, that a person of their age needs adults there along.
Okay. So can you make a statement to that?
Well, Dorothy, you didn't let me know whenever you was telling me about this big weekend, and it sounded really great. Maybe it was my assumption that there would be adults, but now that I find there's not, it's not going to work. You're not.
Okay, so is Dorothy going to be happy with that?
Probably not, because.
Okay, so what would Dorothy be happy with if Dad had said, given his information?
Maybe if he had said it, suggested that there might be a way to solve this problem.
Okay.
What would you think? So maybe James could say something like, well, is there a possibility that we could get some chaperones? Would it help if I volunteered to be a chaperone or something like that? Or even just saying,
do you think we'd be having this argument if all the information had been presented at once to each of us equally?
Right.
Okay. So you see, if you move to that circle of strength and you move to those positions and using those caring habits, you can solve the problem maybe not immediately, but within a few minutes without everybody feeling bad and getting mad at each other. So, all right. So on the scale, did you become more aware of the circle statements as we went through them the second time around? And what connecting habit did you actually use? So, Mom, what connecting habit did you use?
I think part of it was listening and supporting the daughter, along with we had all the information and the needs met.
Okay. And Dad, what kind of behavior, what connecting habits were you using?
Well, it was definitely an accepting voice as opposed to a condemning voice.
Yes. Okay.
Even though he was not pleased with the fact that she had not given all the information.
Right. But it was respectful. Yes. And it was maybe presenting possible options, right? So encouraging her to work a little more to make, to figure out how this could happen.
But
right?
Also in that, I can see that the he was disappointed in the daughter.
Okay.
Her, shielding the facts.
Yeah. So, but if he's disappointed and he's acting on that perception, is he going to be in the disconnecting or in the connecting behaviors?
Well, he's transitioning.
Okay. So he needs to let go of that and move to what's going to make it better in the future. So he could be disappointed, and he can state that. He can say, it's disappointing when I don't get all the information clearly to begin with, because then I can't make a good decision. So now that we have the information, let's look at what we can do. So in other words, you can make that statement, but you want to make sure that you don't continue to be disappointed and run from that position, from that perception. So how is this strategy aligned with the solving circle? Can we hear about the solving circle here? So my time is up, so I'm going to just cut through this, but there's different kinds of conflict, true conflict, false conflict. And, you know, we can talk more about that later, but my time is up, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But is this really a true conflict, or is this a false conflict? This is, to me, this is a false conflict. This is a conflict that everybody's gotten started with. Everybody's moving to the perception of not happy, ineffective, more pain, and they're starting to talk about it that way, instead of moving to future frame. What can we do about it now? How can we take care of this? So somebody, they kind of need to go to work and work on it. It's really not a true conflict. Okay, so just a couple more little things here. The most secure prisons are those we construct for ourselves. And this is Dr. Glasser's. When we label anyone bad, we'll have more trouble dealing with him than if we could have settled for a lesser label. You can see Dorothy's not. We're all happy camper. So the last thing I wanted to do, I don't know if this is going to work. In fact, I think I have to stop my share to put the sound on probably. Or wait, can I do it? Wait, no. Well, anyway, I guess I can't. Let's see. Oh, I'll come back. So I was going to play a song for you, but my time is up anyway. The song is called "It's Something That We Do," and it's a song by Clint Black. It's on his album Nothing But the Taillights. And I'm not necessarily a Clint Black fan, but the words in this song are tremendous. So he says, "Love is not something that we fall into; it's something we do. It's not. Nothing is too big or too small. Everything is important to both of us." And so that's the words in the song. And it's all about what we do, not about what we think or where we go or all the stuff that's going on in the background of our minds, but it's what we actually do. So thank you for participating with me on the Circle of Strength. I hope that was helpful to see how you could move away from that dysfunctional system of pain by getting rid of those perceptions of the errors and moving towards what you want to see happening.
Yes, very much. Thank you, Nancy. That was beautiful. Not only in the verbiage that you gave, but in the pictures also, of seeing the little rigid triangle and then turning it into a circle. That made it more palatable for everyone. So thank you very, very much. And thank each of you for being with us today. And this is up every Wednesday thing. So join us at 10 a.m. Central Time and look on the calendar and be a part. And in the meantime, have a good week and good mental health.